The announcement lasted less than a minute, but its impact tore through the palace like a sudden crack of thunder. Before the senior royals could absorb what had been said, Prince Harry pushed back his chair, challenged the decision, and stormed out through a set of closing doors. At the center of the confrontation stood Princess Charlotte, and a collection of Diana's sapphires that had just been placed beyond Harry's reach forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. King Charles watched the room tighten around him. Inside Windsor Castle, a private royal briefing brought together William, Catherine, Princess Anne, Harry, and trusted officials after palace custodians reviewed jewels linked to Diana, Princess of Wales. Custodians are officials responsible for protecting royal possessions, and their findings mattered because these were no ordinary ornaments. The necklace, earrings, bracelet, and loose stones represented memory, motherhood, and the question of who would carry Diana's legacy forward. William heard the decision and did not flinch. The palace formally confirmed that Charlotte held the protected future rights to the sapphire collection, while he would act as guardian until his daughter reached the age fixed by the arrangement. Protected future rights meant the pieces could not be sold, divided, gifted, or permanently moved before she took responsibility. Catherine understood that an adult conflict was closing around a young girl. Harry reacted before anyone could intervene. He demanded to know why Archie and Lilibet had not been considered, and his voice rose when Anne confirmed the ruling was permanent. Through a documented custodial account, the princess revealed that the arrangement had remained sealed for years and became active only after a condition involving Charlotte was fulfilled. Her answer made the betrayal feel older and deliberate. Charles lowered the confirmation file silently. The monarch knew the truth would wound his younger son, yet delay would turn Diana's jewelry into a weapon. Harry gripped his chair, shoved it away, and told William their mother belonged to both sons. The future king answered that her memory did, but the sapphires could not be broken apart to satisfy grief. Harry stared at his brother and father. No one reversed the final decision. He left as the doors closed behind him. Yet the greatest shock was not that Charlotte had been chosen. It was that Diana's own intentions may have shaped the outcome long before the young princess was born. Harry had left the room in fury. But to understand why the decision cut so deeply, the palace first had to confront what Diana's sapphires represented to each person left behind. To Charlotte, the sapphires were not trophies. They were fragments of a grandmother she had never met. To William, they carried memories too painful to discuss openly. And to Harry, the decision felt like another piece of his mother had been locked behind palace walls. What appeared to be an inheritance dispute was becoming something far more personal, a battle over who had the right to protect Diana's memory and who had been pushed outside it. William remembered seeing Diana wear blue stones during moments when the world expected her to smile. He had been young, but he never forgot the difference between her public calm and the loneliness she carried once the doors closed. The sapphires represented that painful contrast. They were symbols of strength, but they also reminded the prince how much his mother had suffered while performing duties for a family that often demanded silence. Charlotte had grown up hearing carefully chosen stories from her father and Catherine. They told her about Diana's kindness, her courage, and the way she reached people who felt forgotten. A future royal role meant the public duties and family responsibilities she might one day carry. And the young princess understood that the collection came with that burden. She did not see jewelry. She saw a promise that had to be protected. Harry saw something different. Distance from royal life had already taken away his security, his position, and his daily place inside the family. Now he feared it was being used to weaken his bond with his mother. Every formal decision appeared to confirm the same painful message. William's children would carry Diana's royal legacy, while Archie and Lilibet would remain outside the palace story. Catherine felt the danger before anyone said it aloud. She feared Charlotte would become the target of an adult feud she had never created. In a private family sitting room, the girl noticed her father's silence and quietly asked whether Uncle Harry was angry with her. William immediately knelt beside his daughter and promised she had done nothing wrong. His answer was steady, but his expression revealed how deeply the question had wounded him. Princess Anne later explained, through a documented custodial account, that Diana's jewels were never meant to be divided automatically between her sons. Some pieces were tied to future responsibility, family continuity, and the protection of a granddaughter expected to carry her name into public service. The princess made clear that the arrangement was about preservation, not favoritism. King Charles admitted during a private recorded conversation that Harry had been warned months earlier about the possible outcome. The monarch said his younger son simply never believed the palace would make the exclusion official. Catherine remained alone after Charlotte left, fighting tears as she realized her daughter now stood at the center of pain that had begun decades earlier. Long before the chair scraped across the briefing room floor, one confrontation had already turned Diana's sapphires from a private inheritance into a royal line that could no longer be crossed. The palace later treated the sapphire announcement as a carefully managed legal decision. But behind that language stood a far more explosive truth. The crisis began during a private anniversary gathering held in Diana's memory, when Harry asked for one particular piece to be removed from royal custody and sent overseas. The room fell silent. William refused, and in the tense minutes that followed, a family disagreement became a battle over control, trust, and who could speak for Diana. William had delayed a final decision for months. The sapphire collection remained under controlled palace custody because several pieces carried uncertain personal, ceremonial, and family designations. Palace custody meant the jewels were formally protected and could not be removed, divided, or transferred without approval. The prince feared that any careless decision would turn his mother's belongings into weapons during an already fragile family dispute. Princess Anne understood that danger better than anyone. Through a documented archival review, she compared private inventory notes, family instructions, and records connected to Diana's possessions. An archival review is a careful examination of stored historical records used to confirm ownership and intention. The princess wanted one thing above all: to stop the jewels from becoming bargaining tools between two wounded brothers. Harry changed everything during the closed anniversary gathering. With Charles nearby and no cameras present, he asked William to release Diana's sapphire bracelet so it could be taken to California and eventually reserved for Princess Lilibet. He described the request as a fair continuation of his family line. But the future king heard something else: a demand to remove an irreplaceable part of their mother's legacy from Britain before the family had reached any agreement. William stared at the velvet case as the silence deepened. Harry placed one hand beside it and said the bracelet should pass through his side of the family. The prince closed the lid, moved the case away, and answered that no piece would leave royal custody under pressure. His refusal was calm. Its meaning was brutal. Charlotte entered the adjoining room after a rehearsal and recognized the sapphires from a photograph of Diana. Her innocent response changed the direction of Anne's review. Through a recorded conversation with the family custodians, the princess confirmed that the moment led her back to a dormant clause, a condition preserved in the records but never activated. Anne found that selected blue stones were meant to remain together for the senior granddaughter entrusted with carrying Diana's charitable and family legacy. Charlotte's growing royal role fulfilled that condition. The young princess had not demanded the sapphires, yet her place had quietly awakened an arrangement waiting for years. Harry left the gathering wounded but controlled. In the corridor, he told Charles that William had taken their mother from him for a second time. The king tried to answer, but his younger son walked away before he could finish. The anniversary dispute created the fracture, but the Windsor meeting would tear it open, placing two brothers face to face with every grievance they had never resolved. The doors had not yet closed on the Sapphire announcement when Harry turned back. His anger was no longer aimed at the palace lawyers or the custodians who had signed the confirmation. It was aimed at William. Years of grief, resentment, distance, and suspicion suddenly narrowed into one accusation: that the future king had claimed sole ownership of Diana's memory. William did not retreat. For the first time, he answered with equal force. Harry crossed back into the briefing room before anyone could stop him. Charles remained seated, watching his younger son with growing dread, while Princess Anne studied both brothers in silence. A briefing room was the private setting where senior royals received formal decisions before any public statement. This one had become something else entirely. It had become the place where grief finally lost control. William already knew what reversal would mean. If he weakened the decision now, Charlotte's protected position could be challenged again and again whenever family pressure returned. The prince had accepted that protecting his daughter meant becoming the target of his brother's anger. He would not bargain over her future simply to calm the room. Harry stepped closer and looked directly at him. "You do not own her," he said, speaking of Diana with a bitterness that silenced everyone. He accused the palace of celebrating their mother while pushing away the son who had escaped the institution that wounded her. In his mind, the sapphires were no longer jewelry. They were proof that his place beside Diana was being rewritten. William held his ground. He answered that loving their mother did not give either brother the right to turn her belongings into weapons. The future king then accused Harry of making Charlotte carry pain that began between adults. His words landed hard, because they moved the conflict away from inheritance and toward responsibility. Harry came close enough that no one could pretend the exchange was still formal. William told him plainly that Charlotte's rights would stand. Rage vanished from Harry's face for one brief second, replaced by disbelief. He turned toward Charles, expecting his father to intervene. Charles began to rise, but Anne placed one hand firmly on the table. Through the documented custodial record, she confirmed that the decision had already been activated and could not be reopened through anger. A custodial record was the official account defining who protected the collection and under what limits. Her gesture ended the negotiation before the king could speak. Harry insisted Diana once promised that both sons would share everything connected to her. Anne replied that sharing a mother's memory was not the same as dividing every object she left behind. William then revealed that Charlotte would not control the sapphires for years. No adult, not even he, could sell, gift, lend, or permanently relocate them. Harry looked again at Charles. His last hope now rested with the monarch, but the silence in the room concealed a harsher truth. Harry expected his father to overturn William's refusal. Yet the power behind the sapphire verdict belonged to a chain of guardianship even the king could not simply break. Kings can issue commands, but not every royal possession bends to the crown. As Harry demanded that Charles intervene, the deeper structure behind the sapphire decision came into focus. The collection had been shielded through overlapping family instructions, custodial responsibilities, and a guardianship arrangement designed to survive personal conflict. At the center of that system stood Princess Anne, calm, unsentimental, and unwilling to let either of Diana's sons transform Charlotte's inheritance into another royal war. Anne had entered the dispute because Diana's privately associated pieces required someone trusted by both the family and palace administration. Her reputation for discipline made her the natural guardian of the review. A guardianship arrangement is a formal system that places valuable property under protection until the intended person is ready to accept responsibility. The princess understood that once trust collapsed, rules had to carry the weight people no longer could. William carried responsibility for Charlotte, but even he could not treat the sapphires as personal property. The prince could protect them, approve necessary care, and preserve their history, yet he could not sell or divide them. Charlotte's future rights came with obligations, and those obligations mattered, because Diana's collection was meant to remain whole, rather than disappear into competing family branches. Charles still held enormous authority. The king could influence royal households, public duties, and many palace decisions, but overturning this arrangement would mean rejecting safeguards he had already approved. Harry demanded a temporary suspension, hoping delay would create room for another negotiation. Anne refused. Through a recorded custodial meeting, she explained that delay would invite leaks, pressure, and fresh attempts to weaken Charlotte's place. Charles waited until the others had left. Alone with Anne, he removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and admitted that he feared losing Harry completely. The monarch's voice carried the exhaustion of a father who had watched every effort at peace collapse. The princess did not soften the truth. She told him that protecting one wounded son could not require sacrificing an innocent granddaughter. Anne then confirmed through the documented review that the safeguards had been strengthened after the anniversary confrontation. Custodians feared one sapphire piece might be removed and used to support a competing inheritance claim. The collection had to remain unified, not because Charlotte ranked above every other grandchild, but because she had been assigned a future duty tied to Diana's charitable work and family story. Charles faced the choice he had delayed for too long. He could ease Harry's pain for a few days, or protect Charlotte from years of repeated challenges. The king picked up the final confirmation and signed it. The movement was small. Its consequence was permanent. Harry learned within minutes that his father's name stood beneath the decision. His anger no longer belonged only to William or Anne. It now reached the monarch himself. The king's signature ended the argument on paper, but outside the room, it triggered a wave of decisions that made Harry's separation from the palace painfully real. Harry's departure was not dramatic because of how loudly the door closed. It was dramatic because nobody followed him. For years, someone had always stepped into the corridor. A father, a brother, an aide, a peacemaker, hoping to soften the damage. This time, the family remained inside, with Charlotte's future protected, and Harry's anger left unanswered. Within hours, private calls were cancelled, security arrangements were revised, and a personal wound hardened into a new royal reality. Harry left Windsor before the scheduled family discussion had ended. The private farewell arranged with Charles never happened, and the king remained inside knowing his younger son had chosen distance over one final conversation. Palace officials received strict instructions to call the dispute a settled family custodianship decision. Custodianship meant the protected care of valuable family possessions, and the wording mattered because any public comparison between Charlotte and Lilibet could turn two children into symbols of an adult feud. Harry cancelled the meeting with his father and ignored a call from William. The prince's refusal made one thing clear. He no longer viewed the Sapphires as a single disagreement. To him, they had become part of the wider collapse of trust between his family and the institution he had left behind. Charles tried again through a private message, but his son did not answer. Catherine moved quickly to protect Charlotte. She asked officials to remove her daughter's name from internal briefing summaries wherever possible, fearing hostile commentary would frame the young princess as a winner, and Lilibet as the child who had lost. The princess knew how quickly royal duty could become public punishment. She would not allow Charlotte to carry blame for a decision made by adults. Harry read the final confirmation inside his departing car. His face tightened when he saw Charles had personally approved the arrangement. He locked the phone and turned away, but anger slowly gave way to sadness. The king had not merely failed to stop William. He had placed his own name beneath the decision. Charlotte found her father standing alone back at Windsor. She placed a handwritten note beside him that said she never wanted anyone hurt because of her. William read it twice, before looking at his daughter. The future king told her the pain was not hers to carry, yet his voice revealed that he blamed himself for allowing the conflict to reach her. Catherine challenged that guilt. She reminded William that surrendering Charlotte's rights would teach their daughter that peace must always be purchased by making herself smaller. The prince understood the truth, but another threat had already emerged. Details of the confrontation had escaped the room. Someone knew Harry had stormed out. Someone knew the sapphires had been assigned to Charlotte. The palace had spoken in rules and signatures, but the turning point would come through a quiet conversation between the uncle who felt excluded and the niece who never asked to be chosen. No official meeting could repair what had happened. No legal explanation could make Harry feel that he had not lost another part of his mother. The first real shift came in a room without officials, prepared statements, or ceremonial language. Charlotte entered carrying no jewelry and making no claim. She faced the uncle whose anger had shaken the family and asked one simple question. Did he believe Diana would have wanted the sapphires to separate them? Catherine arranged the conversation before Harry left Britain. She told him William would not attend, no aid would remain nearby, and nothing said would be turned into an official statement. The princess understood that an institutional buffer, officials, rules, or formal language placed between people, would only make the distance worse. Harry agreed reluctantly, because he could not bear the thought that Charlotte believed his anger was aimed at her. Charlotte entered nervous but steady. She told Harry she did not think of the sapphires as belonging only to her. The young princess said she saw herself as someone expected to keep them safe until the family needed them. Her words carried no triumph. They carried responsibility, and that quiet difference began to break through the resentment he had carried from the briefing room. Harry finally admitted what the announcement had done to him. Hearing Charlotte's name had made him feel that Archie and Lilibet were being declared less connected to Diana. He said the decision sounded like another palace line, separating those inside from those who had left. Charlotte listened without interrupting. Then she answered that Lilibet remained Diana's granddaughter, whether she received a jewel or not. Charlotte placed a photograph of Diana wearing blue stones on the table between them. Harry stared at his mother's face for several seconds before sitting down. The anger that had driven him from Windsor began to collapse into grief. He no longer saw a collection being taken from him. He saw the old fear that every connection to Diana could disappear unless he physically held on to it. Charlotte then shared her intention through the private conversation Catherine had arranged. When the time came, she wanted the collection connected to causes Diana had supported, not displayed as proof of rank. A protective clause was a recorded condition, limiting how inherited possessions could be used, and the girl's purpose matched the very rule that had placed the sapphires under her future care. Harry understood at last that Charlotte had not defeated his children. The arrangement prevented the stones from being divided, politicized, or carried into competing family stories. He still rejected how the palace had handled the decision, but he told his niece she should never apologize for being trusted. Inside the room, anger had softened into grief. But beyond the palace gates, the sapphire decision was becoming a national argument, fought across headlines, broadcasts, and gathered crowds. By morning, the family's private wound had become the country's loudest royal story. Commentators argued over inheritance, loyalty, exile, and whether Diana's memory belonged inside the monarchy at all. Yet one image rose above every angry headline: a young princess walking beside her father, while cameras called her name, carrying none of the sapphires she had supposedly won. Charlotte's quiet expression transformed the debate from a contest over jewels into a question of responsibility. Palace officials confirmed only that Charlotte would become the future custodian of a protected family collection. A custodian is someone trusted to preserve valuable possessions without treating them as private property. The young princess could not sell, divide, or exploit the sapphires for personal gain. That distinction mattered, because the public was being asked to see her not as an owner, but as a guardian, carrying a duty tied to Diana's memory. Broadcasters quickly divided the story into two painful sides. Harry represented the emotional claim of a son who believed distance had weakened his place within his mother's legacy. William represented the duty to preserve the collection through the direct royal line. The prince remained silent beside Charlotte, knowing every public appearance now risked turning his daughter into the face of a family conflict she had never chosen. Outside Kensington Palace, the debate became deeply personal. Crowds gathered near the gates, carrying photographs of Diana and handwritten messages about her compassion. One woman tied a blue ribbon beneath the memorial display with 5 simple words: "Keep them together for her." The gesture captured what angry commentary could not. Many people did not want the Sapphires divided between rival branches. They wanted them protected from the feud itself. A major morning newspaper intensified the storm. Its front page showed an empty sapphire necklace case beneath the headline, "Diana's Blue Legacy Passes to Charlotte." Supporters of Harry called the decision another punishment for the son who left royal life. Others argued that inheritance could not become an excuse to reopen every grievance or challenge a child's future whenever adult relationships collapsed. Harry watched the coverage privately and saw commentators blaming Charlotte. His anger returned, but this time it moved in a different direction. He contacted his team and ordered them not to criticize his niece, question her position, or encourage comparisons with Lilibet. The instruction reached William through a recorded communications briefing. It did not heal the brothers, but it proved their private conversation had changed something real. The palace then confirmed that the Sapphires would eventually appear at charitable commemorations connected to Diana's humanitarian work under Charlotte's stewardship. A charitable commemoration is an event honoring someone through service and public causes, rather than ceremony alone. Suddenly, the collection's purpose became clearer. When the shouting faded, only one question remained. Not who had won the jewels, but whether the family could carry Diana's memory without destroying one another. The sapphire dispute began with a chair pushed backward and a prince walking out in fury. It ended without a victory celebration, a public apology, or a dramatic reconciliation. Instead, it ended with a harder truth. Diana's legacy could not heal every wound between her sons, and no necklace could prove which child loved her more. The collection needed no conqueror. It needed a guardian, and Charlotte had accepted that responsibility without demanding that anyone else lose their place. The palace kept the confirmation unchanged. Princess Charlotte remained the protected future custodian of Diana's sapphire collection, while William and Princess Anne continued to oversee the pieces until she was ready to accept full responsibility. A future custodian is the person chosen to protect inherited possessions for a larger purpose, rather than treat them as private property. The decision stood because preservation, not power, had always been the final goal. Harry chose not to launch a formal challenge. He remained deeply hurt by the way the announcement had been handled, but his private conversation with Charlotte forced him to confront a painful truth. Attacking his niece would repeat the same cycle of pressure, blame, and resentment he believed had wounded Diana. The prince could reject the palace process without making a young girl pay for it. Harry wrote one final message before leaving: "Keep them safe, and remember who she was." Charlotte read those words beside Catherine, then folded the note into the photograph album devoted to her grandmother. The princess watched her daughter handle the message with quiet care, and understood that compassion, not rank, had given the inheritance its true legitimacy. William also changed. The future king realized that protecting Charlotte required more than defending a legal decision. He had to shield his daughter from carrying the emotional burden of the conflict between Diana's sons. The prince could preserve the sapphires, but he could not allow them to become a chain tying Charlotte to decades of unresolved grief. Charlotte emerged from the crisis without claiming victory. She had not defeated Archie, Lilibet, or Harry. She had accepted a fragile family trust and promised to keep it connected to Diana's charitable service. Through the documented custodial arrangement, the final purpose became clear. The stones would remain together, protected from sale, division, and political use. The monarchy survived because it finally separated inheritance from ownership. Blood created the emotional connection, but responsibility determined who would guard it. Harry's walkout marked the end of his attempt to hold Diana's legacy through royal possessions. Charlotte's quiet acceptance began something different, an inheritance shaped by protection, service, and compassion. The doors Harry stormed through eventually closed, but Diana's memory was not trapped behind them. It passed forward through Charlotte, not as a prize claimed from one side of the family, but as a promise kept for all of them. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.